His lips crashed against hers with the force of 12 years of denial. Elena pressed back against the wall of her Barcelona studio, her flour-dusted hands finding his hair, pulling him closer even though every logical part of her brain screamed to push him away. Dante Kim kissed like a man starving, like he'd crossed an ocean just to taste her, like this was both his salvation and his damnation. And maybe it was. His hands cupped her face with a gentleness that contradicted the desperation of his mouth. She could feel him trembling, or maybe that was her, or maybe they were both falling apart in this small room that smelled of vanilla and burnt sugar. When his tongue swept against her bottom lip, she opened for him without thinking, and the sound he made, raw and broken, nearly destroyed her. "Elena," he breathed against her mouth, and then he was kissing her again, deeper this time. His hands slid down to her waist, pulling her flush against him, and she could feel his heart hammering against her chest. Or was that her heart? She couldn't tell where she ended, and he began. She bit his lip. He groaned. His fingers tightened on her hips hard enough to bruise, and she wanted the bruises, wanted proof that this was real, that Dante Kim had finally crossed the line they'd been dancing around for over a decade. "Please," she whispered, though she wasn't sure what she was begging for. More? Less? Everything. His response was to kiss her harder, backing her further against the wall, one hand sliding up her rib cage, thumb brushing the underside of her breast through her thin shirt. She arched into the touch, and he made that sound again, that desperate, hungry sound that made her feel powerful and terrified. His mouth left hers, trailing hot kisses down her jaw, her neck, finding that spot below her ear that made her gasp. "I've wanted to do this for so long," he murmured against her skin. "So damn long." "Then don't stop," she whispered, tilting her head to give him better access. But even as she said it, she felt him tense, felt the moment reality crashed back in. Then he froze, just stopped, his lips still against her throat, his breathing ragged. Elena felt the shift before he moved, the way his body went rigid, the way panic replaced desire in the space of a heartbeat. "No." The word was barely audible. "No, I can't." He stepped back like she'd burned him. His eyes were wild, his lips swollen from her kisses, his hair destroyed by her hands. He looked at her like she was both everything he wanted and everything that terrified him. "Dante, I'm sorry." He was already moving toward the door, his coordination gone, stumbling like he was drunk. "I shouldn't have. This was a mistake. I'm sorry." Then he was gone. The door slammed shut, and Elena stood there in her ruined studio, tasting him on her lips, feeling the ghost of his hands on her body. Her legs gave out and she slid down the wall to the floor, pressing her fingers to her mouth. He'd run. Again. But this time she wasn't going to chase him. Dante made it 3 blocks before he had to stop, bracing himself against a building in Barcelona's Gothic quarter, trying to remember how to breathe. His lips still tingled. He could still smell her perfume mixed with the scent of whatever she'd been baking. Cinnamon, cardamom, Elena. What had he done? He'd kissed his best friend. No, worse. He'd kissed her like a man possessed, touched her like she belonged to him, and then he'd run like a coward. Again. Just like he had 6 months ago in Busan when everything had fallen apart the first time. His phone buzzed, his assistant probably wondering where he disappeared to. He'd left a board meeting in the middle of a presentation, caught a flight to Barcelona without telling anyone, tracked Elena down through her social media posts because he was apparently a stalker now. All because he couldn't get her out of his head. It had been 4 months since she'd left Busan. 4 months since she'd stopped answering his calls, stopped being his constant, stopped being the person he called at 2 a.m. when he couldn't sleep. 4 months of her Instagram posts showing her smiling in a way she never smiled with him, free, radiant, alive. 4 months of slowly going insane. He'd tried to move on, threw himself into work. Went on dates that felt like torture because none of them were Elena. Tried to convince himself that what he felt was just the fear of losing his best friend, not the earth-shattering realization that he was desperately, catastrophically in love with her. That kiss had just obliterated every lie he'd told himself, and he'd run anyway. His phone buzzed again. This time it was his brother, Kai. "Where are you?" "Mom's losing it. The investors are asking questions." He stared at the message, then at the narrow street stretching before him. Somewhere back there was Elena's studio. Elena, who'd tasted like hope and heartbreak. Elena, who'd kissed him back with a hunger that matched his own. Elena, who he'd just destroyed. Again. On my way back, he lied and started walking in the opposite direction of the airport. But let's rewind. Let me tell you how two people who were supposed to be just friends ended up breaking each other's hearts across 2 continents. It started on a rooftop in Hyundai, 6 months before everything shattered. Elena had brought a small cake, dark chocolate with sea salt caramel, Dante's favorite since they were teenagers. The July heat was brutal, but up here, with Busan's coastline stretched beneath them like a jeweled necklace, it felt like they owned the world. "You made this?" Dante asked, already cutting himself a second slice. His tie was loosened, his shirt sleeves rolled up, and Elena tried not to stare at his forearms. Failed, as always. Who else? She poured them both wine, expensive red that his family's company imported. "Happy early birthday, Dante." He caught her wrist as she handed him the glass, his thumb pressing against her pulse point. The touch sent electricity straight through her body. "You're the only person who really knows me. You know that?" Her heart stopped, started, stopped again. "Don't say things like that." "Why not?" "It's true." He didn't release her wrist. Instead, he pulled her closer until she was standing between his knees, where he sat on the ledge. "Everyone else wants something: power, money, connection. But you—" His free hand came up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering on her cheek. "You just see me?" She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. His thumb was still on her pulse, surely feeling how her heart was trying to escape her chest. "Dante, stay just like this," he whispered. "Just for a minute. Let me pretend." "Pretend what?" Her voice was barely audible. He didn't answer, just looked at her with those dark eyes that had haunted her dreams since she was 17. His gaze dropped to her lips, and for one heart-stopping moment, she thought he might kiss her. Right there, under the stars, with all of Busan spread beneath them. But he didn't. He released her wrist and turned back to the cake, the moment shattering like glass. "This is incredible, Lena. You could open your own place. Forget the gallery. Do what you actually love." The words stung more than they should have. What she actually loved was sitting right in front of her, completely oblivious. "Maybe I will," she said, keeping her voice light even as her heart ached. "Maybe I'll leave Busan, start fresh somewhere new." Something flickered across his face. "You'd never leave. You love it here too much." Wrong, she thought. "I love you too much." "That's what friends do," she said instead, hating the word even as she spoke it. "They stay." "Best friends," he corrected, and the word felt like a cage door slamming shut. They ate cake and drank wine and watched the city lights flicker along the waterfront. Dante told her about the expansion into European markets, about his mother's pressure to settle down with someone suitable. Elena laughed in all the right places, nodded thoughtfully, played the role she'd perfected over a decade. Best friend, confidant, the girl who would always be there, never the girl he'd choose. When the night air grew cold, Dante shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. The gesture was casual, something he'd done 100 times before. But when his hands lingered on her shoulders, thumbs brushing against her collarbone, everything felt different. "You're shivering," he murmured, his voice low and rough. "I'm fine." Liar. He pulled her back against his chest, his arms wrapping around her waist. Better? So much worse, she thought, because this, his warmth, his solid presence, the way she fit perfectly against him, this was torture disguised as comfort. "Yeah," she whispered. "Better." They stayed like that for 20 minutes. His chin rested on top of her head, his breath stirring her hair. One of his hands splayed across her stomach, and she could feel each individual finger burning through the fabric of her dress. If she turned around, if she tilted her face up, their lips would be inches apart. But she didn't turn around, and he didn't ask her to. That rooftop moment should have been a warning. She should have seen how easily he assumed her permanence, how comfortably he held her while keeping her at arm's length. But hindsight is brutal that way. 3 weeks later, everything changed at his actual birthday party. The Kim family estate in Centum City was obscene. Marble floors imported from Italy, crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people's homes, champagne towers that flowed endlessly. Hussein's elite packed into the ballroom, all vying for proximity to the Kim dynasty's golden heir. Elena wore red for the first time in her life, a dress that hugged every curve, with a neckline that dipped low enough to be daring. She'd spent hours on her hair, her makeup, transforming herself from Dante's comfortable best friend into someone who might finally catch his eye as a woman. For exactly 7 minutes, it worked. She was standing near the terrace overlooking the bay when she felt him before she saw him. That familiar pull, like gravity shifting. Red. His voice behind her made her turn. Dante stood there in a Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than her rent, but it was the look in his eyes that stopped her heart. Dark, hungry, dangerous. "You've never worn red before," he said, his voice rough. "Maybe I'm tired of blending in?" He moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne. "You could never blend in, Lena. Not to me." Something shifted in his expression, something dangerous and wanting. He pulled her onto the dance floor without asking, one hand spanning her lower back, the other capturing hers. The orchestra played something slow and devastating, and they moved together like they'd been doing this forever. Elena. His breath was warm against her ear, his body pressed so close she could feel every defined muscle through the thin fabric of her dress. "You're killing me in this dress!" Her pulse jumped. "Good." His hand tightened on her back, fingers splaying across bare skin where the dress dipped low. They were dancing too close, too intimate for friends, but she couldn't make herself care. This was the most honest they'd been in 12 years, and she was drowning in it. "If things were different," he started, then stopped. "Different how? If I wasn't who I am, if we didn't have all this history, if I wasn't terrified of losing you." His fingers traced patterns on her spine that made her shiver. "If I could be selfish for once in my goddamn life." "You're not going to lose me," she whispered, and the lie tasted bitter. He pulled back just enough to look at her, his dark eyes searching hers. The ballroom faded. The music became background noise. For one perfect, agonizing moment, she thought he was going to kiss her. His gaze dropped to her lips, his hand sliding higher on her back, pulling her impossibly closer. "Lena," he breathed, and she could feel the word more than hear it. Then Sienna Han cut in. She was beautiful, confident, from the right family. She touched Dante's shoulder with casual ownership, and Elena watched his expression shift, watched him remember who he was supposed to be, what was expected of him, watched him choose duty over desire. "Excuse me," Sienna said, though she wasn't sorry at all. "Birthday tradition. The Kims and Hans always share the first waltz." Dante released Elena without a word. Just let her go, his attention already shifting to Sienna's perfect smile, his hand settling on her waist with practiced ease. No hesitation, no backward glance. like Elena had never existed at all. She stood there frozen, watching them dance, watching Sienna lean into him, whisper something that made him laugh, watching his hand rest on the small of Sienna's back, the same place he'd touched Elena just seconds ago. And something inside her finally, irrevocably broke. She lasted another hour, smiled through congratulations on her recent gallery opening, accepted compliments on her dress from people whose names she'd never remember, pretended her heart wasn't bleeding out in the middle of a ballroom while Dante charmed everyone but her. She saw him laugh with Sienna 3 more times, saw him dance with 2 other women from suitable families, saw him do everything except look for her. So she grabbed her coat and left without saying goodbye. The text came at 3 a.m. "Where'd you go? I was looking for you." She stared at it for 20 minutes, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. Looking for her. When? After Sienna? After the parade of perfect prospects his mother had lined up? Home. Tired. "Can I call you tomorrow? I wanted to talk to you about something." "Sure," she lied. She didn't answer his call the next day. Or the next. Or the next. Instead, she went to her penthouse kitchen in Marine City and baked until her hands were raw. Not delicate pastries, but something that required pain, a croquembouche that demanded she dip her fingers into molten caramel again and again, building something beautiful through sheer force of will. The burns felt good. They gave her something to focus on besides the ache in her chest. Dante called 17 times that first week. She ignored all of them. By week 2, she'd enrolled in a prestigious culinary program in Barcelona, started researching what it would take to disappear from his life completely. By week 3, she'd stopped counting his calls and started packing her apartment. Week 4, Dante caught her leaving her building. He looked like hell. His usual polish was gone. Rumpled shirt, no tie, dark circles that suggested he'd slept as little as she had. For a moment, guilt flickered in her chest. Then she remembered Sienna's hand on his chest, his easy smile, the way he'd let Elena go without a second thought. "Lena." He blocked her path, desperate. 4 weeks. You've ignored me for 4 weeks. What the hell is going on?" "Nothing's going on." She tried to step around him. He moved with her, catching her arm. "Don't lie to me. Please, I know you. Something's wrong." "You don't know me, Dante. That's the problem." His grip tightened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means—" She yanked her arm free, her voice rising. "It means I'm tired of being your emotional support system while you date everyone but me. I'm tired of being the girl you call at 2 a.m. when you're lonely, the one you hold on rooftops and dance with at parties, only to hand off to the next suitable prospect your mother approves of." The words hung between them, ugly and true. Dante's face went white. "That's not— Lena, you're my best friend. You're the most important person in my life." "Best friend." She laughed, and it sounded broken even to her own ears. "Do you know how much I hate that word? Do you have any idea what it's like to watch you touch me like I matter, look at me like you see me, and then turn around and choose someone else? Anyone else? I never meant—" "I know you didn't. That's what makes it worse." She stepped back, putting distance between them. "I'm leaving, Dante. I got accepted to a culinary program in Barcelona. I'm done being the shadow in your life." "Barcelona?" He looked stunned. "When were you going to tell me?" "I wasn't." The admission felt like freedom and agony all at once. "I can't do this anymore. I can't watch you live your life and pretend I'm okay being on the sidelines. Lena, please." "Goodbye, Dante." She walked away before he could respond, before she could see his face, before she could change her mind. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely unlock her car, but she didn't look back. Not even when she heard him call her name one last time. Barcelona was supposed to be her fresh start. New city, new school, new life. No Dante Kim haunting every corner, every memory, every breath. The culinary program was intense, exactly what she needed. 16-hour days learning technique, precision, the art of creating something beautiful from raw ingredients. Her hands learned to work with chocolate tempering, sugar work, laminated dough, things that required absolute focus and left no room for heartbreak. She made friends, went to bars in Elborn, explored La Boqueria market on Sunday mornings, posted photos on Instagram of Gothic architecture and plates of patatas bravas and her tiny studio apartment in Grazia. She smiled in every photo. She was fine, totally fine. The ache in her chest was just adjusting to the altitude, or something. Then, at 3 months, Marco happened. He was Italian, a chocolatier doing a guest lecture on ganache ratios, tall, charming, with hands that moved like poetry when he worked with cocoa. He asked her to coffee after class, then dinner, then a weekend trip to Sitges. He kissed her on a beach at sunset, and it was nice, sweet, uncomplicated. It wasn't Dante, but maybe that was the point. "You're not really here," Marco said one night, his thumb tracing her jaw. "Your body is, but your mind, you're somewhere else, someone else." She wanted to deny it, couldn't. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He kissed her forehead. "Me too. Whoever he is, he's an idiot for letting you go." They ended things amicably, stayed friends, and Elena threw herself deeper into her work, determined to excise Dante Kim from her heart through sheer force of will. It almost worked. Month 4, she was working on her final project, an elaborate wedding cake that required architectural precision and artistic flair, when her phone buzzed. Not a call, a message, from Kai, Dante's brother. "He's falling apart, won't eat, barely sleeps, snaps at everyone. Board meeting yesterday, he just walked out mid-presentation. Mom's worried. I'm worried. I know you're trying to move on, but he needs you." She stared at the message for 10 minutes, then deleted it without responding. Dante had made his choice. She'd made hers. That was that. Except it wasn't, because 2 days later she was piping royal icing onto sugar flowers when she felt it. That familiar gravitational pull that meant only one thing. She looked up. Dante stood in the doorway of her studio classroom, looking like he'd walked through hell to get there. Their eyes met across 30 feet of space, and everything else disappeared. Her instructor was saying something about technique. Her classmates were chattering. The world was moving. But Elena and Dante were frozen, caught in a moment that felt like fate and disaster colliding. He crossed the room slowly, like he was afraid she'd bolt. Maybe she should have. Instead, she stood there, hands covered in icing, heart hammering against her ribs. "Hi," he said when he reached her, his voice rough. "Hi. Your cake is beautiful. What are you doing here, Dante?" Away from curious eyes and listening ears. The moment they were alone, the air between them crackled with tension. "I've been losing my mind," he said without preamble. 4 months, Lena. 4 months of wondering if you're okay, if you're happy, if you've met someone. Why do you care? Why do I?" He laughed, sharp and bitter. "Because I can't breathe without you. Because every morning I reach for my phone to text you something stupid and remember you're gone. Because I see something funny and turn to share it with you, but you're not there. You're never there anymore." "That's not my problem anymore," she said, but her voice wavered. "Isn't it?" He stepped closer, and she could smell his cologne, see the desperation in his eyes. "Because I think it is. I think you're just as miserable as I am. I think you ran halfway across the world to escape what we both know is true, which is that we're in love with each other, that we have been for years, and I was too much of a coward to admit it." The words hung in the air between them, explosive and terrifying. Elena's heart stopped, restarted, thundered against her ribs. "You don't mean that," she whispered. "I've never meant anything more in my life." He reached for her hand, his fingers threading through hers, and the touch sent electricity straight through her body. "I kissed you that night in your penthouse. Do you remember? Right before you left? You ran away. I know. I panicked. I'd finally crossed that line and it terrified me because it was real. Too real. I couldn't pretend anymore that what I felt was just friendship." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "But running away was the biggest mistake of my life. Dante, let me finish, please." He took a shaky breath. "When you left Busan, something broke inside me. I tried to convince myself I was fine, that I just missed my best friend. But then I saw your photos, you smiling in ways you never smiled with me. Free. Happy. And I realized I'd been keeping you in a cage all these years, too scared to love you the way you deserved because I was terrified of losing you." Tears burned behind Elena's eyes. "You did lose me. I know." His voice cracked. "And it's killing me. These 4 months have been the worst of my life. Nothing tastes right. Nothing feels right. I can't sleep because when I close my eyes, all I see is you walking away from me." She wanted to pull her hand back, to protect herself, but she couldn't move. "Why now? Why fly all the way here to tell me this? Because I can't live like this anymore? Because I'd rather have you hate me for being honest than spend the rest of my life wondering what if?" He pulled her closer until they were inches apart. "Because I'm desperately, completely, irrevocably in love with you, Elena Chen. And I need you to know that before it's too late." Her breath caught. "It might already be too late." "Is it?" His free hand came up to cup her face, and she couldn't stop herself from leaning into the touch. "Tell me you don't feel this. Tell me that when I touch you, your heart doesn't race. Tell me you've moved on, that you've found someone else, and I'll walk away right now. I'll never bother you again." She should lie, should protect herself, should send him away before he destroyed her all over again. But she'd never been able to lie to him. "I can't," she whispered. The hope that flared in his eyes was almost painful to witness. "Can't what?" "I can't tell you I don't feel it. I can't tell you I've moved on." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I tried, Dante. God, I tried so hard, but you're in everything. Every cake I bake, every sunset I see, every moment I should be happy, but I'm not, because you're not there." He brushed the tear away with his thumb, his touch achingly gentle. "Then let me be there. Let me fix this. Please, Lena, give me a chance to love you the way I should have been loving you all along. You hurt me," her voice broke. "You hurt me so badly." I know, and I'm so sorry." He pressed his forehead against hers, his breath mingling with hers. "I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you let me. I'll prove to you that I mean this, that I'm not going to run again." "How?" she demanded, pulling back to look at him. "How do I know you won't panic the moment things get real? That you won't choose duty over me again? Because I already chose you." His hand slid to the back of her neck, fingers tangling in her hair. "The moment I got on that plane, the moment I walked away from a board meeting to find you, the moment I realized that nothing, not my family's expectations, not the company, not anything, matters if I don't have you." She searched his face, looking for hesitation, for doubt, found only raw honesty and desperate hope. "Dante," he kissed her, not like before, frantic and desperate. This kiss was different, slower, deeper, full of promise and apology, and years of pent-up longing. His mouth moved against hers with devastating tenderness, like she was something precious he'd almost lost and was finally holding again. Elena melted into him, her free hand fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. He made a sound low in his throat, his arm wrapping around her waist, lifting her slightly off her feet. The kiss deepened, turned hungry, and suddenly they were stumbling backward until her back hit the wall. God, Lena, he breathed against her lips. I've missed you. Missed this. Missed us. There was never an us, she whispered back, even as she kissed him again. Then let there be now. His mouth traveled to her jaw, her neck, that spot below her ear that made her gasp. Let me take you to dinner. Let me show you Barcelona. Let me prove that I'm serious about this. Her laugh was shaky. You flew across the world. I think you've proven you're serious. He pulled back to look at her, his eyes dark with desire and something deeper, something that looked like forever. Have dinner with me tonight. Dante, just dinner. We'll talk, really talk. And if after tonight you tell me to leave, I will. But please give me this chance. She knew she should say no, should protect her heart, should make him work for it. But she'd never been able to deny him anything. Okay, she whispered. Dinner. The smile that broke across his face was blinding. He picked her up at 8, wearing dark jeans and a black button-down that made him look unfairly gorgeous. Elena had changed 3 times before settling on a simple cream dress that made her feel confident without trying too hard. You're beautiful, he said when she opened the door, his eyes roaming over her with open appreciation. You're not so bad yourself. He took her to a small restaurant in Elborn, intimate and candlelit, where the owner greeted him like an old friend. You've been here before, Elena said as they sat. I've been in Barcelona for 3 days. He poured them both wine. I've been trying to work up the courage to find you. What changed? I ran out of time and courage. He reached across the table for her hand. My flight back is tomorrow morning. It was now or never. Tomorrow. The words settled like lead in her stomach. You're leaving tomorrow. That was the plan. His thumb stroked her knuckles. But plans can change if you give me a reason to stay. They talked through dinner, really talked in ways they never had before, about his fear of losing her if he admitted his feelings, about her years of silent longing, about the night of his birthday party and how, watching him with Sienna, had finally broken something in her. I didn't want her, he said quietly. I've never wanted anyone but you. But I was so convinced that I couldn't have you, that I'd ruin everything if I tried, that I kept pushing you away while holding on too tight. You made me feel invisible, she admitted, like I was good enough to be your friend, but not good enough to be your choice. Pain flashed across his face. You've always been my choice, Lena. I was just too scared to choose you out loud. After dinner, they walked along the beach at Barceloneta, shoes in hand, letting the Mediterranean lap at their feet. The moon was full, painting everything in silver, and Elena felt like she was living in a dream. Come back with me, Dante said suddenly, stopping to face her. What? To Busan? Not right away. Finish your program first, but after. Come back. He took both her hands in his. I know I have no right to ask. I know I need to earn your trust again, but I want to do this right. I want to date you properly, take you to dinner, meet you after class, fall asleep on the phone with you. All of it. Dante, I love you. The words came out fierce and certain. I'm in love with you, Elena Chen. Have been for years. Probably since that summer we were 20, and you taught yourself to make my grandmother's honey cakes just to cheer me up. And I'm done pretending I don't. I'm done being afraid. She looked at him, really looked at him. This man she'd loved for over a decade, saw the fear in his eyes, but also the determination, the vulnerability, the absolute certainty. I love you too, she whispered, and watched relief crash over his face. I've loved you for so long, I don't remember not loving you. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. Thank God, he murmured into her hair. Thank God. They stood there on the beach, wrapped around each other, the waves singing their approval. When Dante finally pulled back, his eyes were suspiciously bright. "Stay with me tonight," he said softly. "Not, I don't mean—" He stumbled over the words, endearingly nervous. "I just want to hold you, wake up with you, make up for 4 months of sleeping alone." Every rational thought told her to be cautious, to take things slow, to protect her heart. But her heart had always belonged to him anyway. "Okay," she whispered. His hotel room overlooked the city, floor-to-ceiling windows framing Barcelona in lights. They stood together, looking out, his arms around her waist, her back against his chest, just like that night on the rooftop in Hyundai. But different now, real now. "I'm not running this time," he murmured against her hair. "You better not." He turned her in his arms, and the look in his eyes stole her breath. "I mean it, Lena. I'm all in. Whatever it takes, however long it takes. I'm yours." She rose on her toes and kissed him, slow and deep and full of promise. His hands slid down to her hips, pulling her closer, and she felt his heart beating against hers. Finally, in sync. They kissed until they were breathless, until the city lights blurred, until nothing existed except the two of them, and the future they were finally brave enough to reach for. "I'm scared," she admitted when they finally broke apart. "Me too." He rested his forehead against hers. "But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you." That night they lay tangled together in his hotel bed, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her back. They talked until dawn, about everything and nothing, making plans and promises, healing old wounds with new honesty. 6 months, she said as the sun started to rise. "I have 6 months left in my program. I'll wait." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "I'll visit every month. We'll video call every day. Whatever you need. And then we figure it out together." He tilted her face up to kiss her softly. "No more running. No more hiding. Just us, finally doing this right." She smiled against his lips. "Just us. Just us," he echoed, and kissed her like a promise. Outside, Barcelona woke up to a new day. Inside, two people who'd been dancing around each other for 12 years finally stopped running and started living. The story was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, Elena believed in happy endings, and in the man who'd crossed an ocean to give her one. If you enjoyed this story of second chances and brave hearts, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more emotional journeys. Drop a comment telling me, have you ever had to leave someone you love to find yourself? Your story matters. And remember, sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones where we finally choose ourselves first, so someone else can choose us second. See you in the next one.